Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be working on a resin beach scene. Now I'm going back to basics. I'm going back to the very original style of beach that I've done in the past, where I incorporate some real sand and then I pour the resin on and then create the waves. Only this time I'm going to be incorporating some ashes. My client's mum sadly passed away and he would love to incorporate some of her ashes in the beach scene. Now we've got some real West Australian sand that we're going to be mixing some of these ashes in with, and then I'm also going to be adding some more ashes to the sand to get that sort of grainy textural effect. Now Australia was one of her favourite places to come, so this is going to be a fitting tribute to his mum. So without further ado, let's get into creating our beach scene. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to decant some of the ashes into a small container, and then once I've used what I need, I can then pour it back in. So I'm going to pop my mask on because I don't want to be breathing any of the ashes in, and I'm just going to go and pop some gloves on, so I shall be right back. Okay, so let's get some of these ashes out. Now I've not actually taken ashes out of a container before, so let's very carefully remove these. Okay, so they're in a little Ziploc bag, so I'm just going to grab a spoon and then put some into the bag. So I've got myself a clean spoon, and let's very carefully take some of the ashes out, and we can add them to the sand mixture. Okay, we'll use this for the time being, and if I need to get some more, I will do. So just let me very carefully seal this back up. And place it back inside for the time being. Oops. Okay, so we have our sand also. You can see it's quite fine texture, and the ashes are a little bit more gritty, so this will add some nice depth to the sand. So let me just go and mix some resin and we'll come back. Now the resin I'm using is from U-Resin. It's the liquid glass and it's a 1:1 ratio, and so we're just going to mix up small batches to start off with, because I'm doing this in batches. So I'm going to do the sand first and then I'll come back and mix up some more for the water. Now all up it's going to be about a litre of resin used on this board, maybe just a little bit more once I've added the waves and what have you. So I'm just going to mix up what I feel is about a third at the moment for the sand, and then we'll be doing almost all of it for the water and then a little bit extra for the sand, for the waves, sorry. Now make sure that you, when working with resin, that you're working in a well ventilated area and that you've got the appropriate safety gear on, respirator, gloves, etc., and make sure that you are thinking of safety first. Now this is quite a thick resin to start off with, because the one part is thicker than the other and it goes sort of cloudy while you're mixing it. So just keep mixing it until it goes clear, remembering to scrape around the sides of the cup to make sure that you get it all mixed properly. Now I don't have a pressure chamber or anything to remove the bubbles, but because we're going to be pouring it over the board, we shouldn't have too much of an issue, because we can use a torch and a heat gun to pop any bubbles. So my main concern is making sure that I've actually got this mixed properly. Right, okay. So I'm just going to give that a quick wipe because I don't want any sticky resin sitting around on the board. So just let me wipe this up. Now what I've done to prime this board, I've left it unpainted because I want it to have a similar colour to the sand. But what I did do is I poured some PVA glue over the top just to seal the board so that to reduce the amount of bubbles that we get degassing from the MDF. So next we're going to pop some sand in a bowl. Not sure how much we're going to need just yet, so we can do it in stages. And then I'm going to pour some of the resin into the sand, and then we'll start mixing this up. Now the sand will go darker when mixed with resin because it looks wet. Now there's a couple of things you can do to this afterwards, is you can actually sprinkle more sand over the top and this will lighten up in areas, or if you like the darker look because it gives the impression that it's wet, that's also fine. So I'm going to make this quite runny because we want it to flow over the board. Now it's getting a bit hard for the stick, so I think I'm going to use something else to mix. So this is an old ice cream scoop that I use for anything that I'm mixing with when I'm using tile grout and things like that. This is what I use to help me mix everything together. Just make sure all of the sand is coated in the resin. Now see how it's self-leveling? So I think that consistency is quite good. Right, okay, let's start adding the sand to the board. I'm actually going to use my hands to move this around. So all I'm doing is I'm just dragging some of the high spots down and just making it touch the bottom of the board, and then just take any excess off. And now I just want to get rid of any ridges that I've created with my hands. And it is going to self-level to a certain extent. We still will get high and low spots. And then all I want to do is I just want to take off any ridges that are sitting across the top here, so that it blends a little bit with the background. Right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start sprinkling some of the ashes over the top of the sand. I don't want to do too much because we don't want it falling off the surface once the resin has dried. So I think what I'll do is that'll do for that. So what I want to do now is I just want to make sure that this is well and truly stuck in with the sand and the resin, because we don't want any coming off, but also I don't want it looking like it's just sitting on the top of the sand. So we're just going to move this around a touch just to make sure that it's stuck in the resin. Now it does move. I might need to use my glove. I think I'll put a glove hand on and then press down because we're getting little divots and things. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to press it in with my hands. because it will still, like I say, still self-level. So we'll just press this in and make sure it's all contained within the sand and resin. Now it actually looks like footprints now in the sand, which is quite nice, but they will, I would imagine, still level off a little bit, so you won't see too much of the ripples. So by doing it this way, the ashes are not lost in underneath the sand. So I don't like that little bit, we'll get rid of that. So this actually looks like it's part of the beach now, and I'm really liking how this is looking. So now it's time to mix up some more resin. This time it's for the water. So the colours I'm going to be using for the water is a jade and a sapphire blue from Artisue. Now these are no longer available, so I will find alternative colours, similar colours for you to purchase to get the same look. I shall leave some links in the description box below. Now I'm an ambassador for uResin, so if you want to purchase anything from uResin, you can get 10% off. So I'll leave a code in the description box below. So I'm just going to go and get my resin, and then we're going to start mixing it up. So we're going to start off with having a clear for the edges here. So I'm going to split the resin between 3 cups, and I'm going to just add the tiniest little bit of jade to this, just a little tiny drop, because I just want to tint it ever so slightly. So we've just got the bit of a translucent water to just make sure that's well and truly mixed. So we're going to start our wave over the sand. We're just going to so I'm actually thinking I will stick a little bit of clear just on the edge, just so that we don't have a hard line of blue. Okay, so now we want a touch more of the jade colour. So pop that in there, and I'm going to add a bit more than we had before. Now working on such a large piece like this, it's a good idea to mix your resin in batches and then get it down, rather than letting the resin sit in the cup, because the longer you leave it, the quicker it's going to go off. So we're going to have a lot more of the blue this time. So it's going to be more bluey, and just a small amount of the jade. There we go, and then let's mix that and see how that's looking. So that's going to mainly be in this area here, so I'm just going to let that run down. Right, let's give this a quick blast with the heat gun, just to pop any bubbles. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to spread the resin out a little bit. So starting down near the edge, I'm going to just mix it slightly using my fingers, just to get a bit of a blend going on between the light and dark areas. And then we're going to move the resin up to the edges. I'm just going to dabble in my fingers across the surface just to blend it slightly. Now I'm just going to wet the outside, just so that we've got a little bit of resin runoff. So what I want to do now is add some heat again, only this time I really want to warm the resin up. So for the darker areas, I'm going to use some of this Stormy Sky, because it's slightly darker. So I want to use, so we've got like some good contrast and depth, just about this much. And we're going to pop it into our cup, and I'm going to now add some resin to it. Yeah, so that's a bit darker, so it should give us a bit better contrast between the colours. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that to the top end. And then we'll do the same as we did before. We'll bring it down and mix it with the other colours to get it transitioning from, so we've not got a hard line, so just using my fingers, I'm just going to pull this through and get a nice blend. Yeah, I'm liking that better now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a touch of white to the resin for the waves, and then we're going to use some clear. Now, someone said that they didn't like the amount of white that I was using. They said they were cringing because I was using way too much white. I was like, well, yeah, each their own, I suppose. So for me, I want to make sure that the white is very opaque and that it's not translucent, because at the end of the day I want the waves to flow and spread and you to see it and not lose it. So I'm just going to set that to one side and I'll go and get the clear. So I've just popped the clear into a silicone cup just so that I can control a little bit more of the movement of how much I'm pouring. So I'm just going to pour some at the edge, and then I'm just going to follow the shape and now we're going to go and add some white. So I'm going to start by just drizzling it across. You know what, I think I'm going to pour it. I'm going to blow it shortly anyway. Let's see how we get on with this. So using the heat gun, I'm now going to take my glove off so that I've not got resin all over my heat gun. So I'm now going to blow this quite hard. So as you can see, I don't tend to blow back like a lot of people do. I like to work from the top and allow it to spread out so that you get a little bit more of a natural look. Now I do want to add some more white in this area, so I'm going to pop a glove back on and then I'll add some more white. So I want some white in this area here. I think it needs some waves up there and maybe a bit more white in this area. And I also think that it needs a touch more around here. Okay, we're slowly getting there. I'm thinking a touch more white around this area. Okay, so I'm going to leave this now, and we'll just keep coming back occasionally just to pop any bubbles. So welcome back to a brand new day. So after taking some photographs and speaking with the client, it's been decided that I need to move the water down to this line here, and he wants to see a lot more white surf going through it. So I'm going to re-pour the resin on this, but in order to do that, I've first got to give the resin some tooth to bind to, because at the moment, because this resin is really smooth, you run the risk of it pooling and separating and ending up with divots. So we need to give something for the resin to bind to. So to do that, we first have to lightly sand the surface. So I'm going to pop my little dust mask on. Hopefully you can still hear me okay. And then I'm just going to just scuff up the surface a little bit just by going over the top with a sanding block. And just as you can see, in a circular motion, just to rough up this a little bit to give the resin something to bind to. Okay, so I'm going to start pouring the fresh batch of resin, and I want the colour to go further up the beach. Now I've just mixed up two colours this time because I want a nice vibrant colour, so I've gone with the sapphire blue and the jade once again. As you can see, I'm just going to blend these together a touch. Just let that run out. So I'm just going to give the bubbles a quick pop. And then using my gloved hand again, I'm going to spread this around so that it'll start leveling off. And I do want it to mix a little bit in the middle so we've got a transition between the two colours. Now don't worry too much about this white that we're seeing here, because the bottom is going to have a lot more white than we had before. So I'm just going to make sure we've got plenty of resin covering the underneath. Not that it matters if we see a little bit of the underneath, because that'll add to the depth. But all I'm doing now is just dabbling my fingers across the surface just to break it up a little bit and allow the mica pigment to do its thing. Right, so now to just pop some bubbles. So now I'm going to go and mix up some white, and then we'll add some clear. Right, so I'm going to add some clear to the front edge here, just that when we come to mix the white, it's got a barrier to sit on, because I want quite a bit of white, and I'm going to do it in stages just to see how it's looking. So we're going to pour some white over the top of the clear. And then using the heat gun, we're going to disperse it. So I'm not going to crop any of this bit out. I'm going to allow you to see me blowing the white to help disperse it and help to create some cells and lacing in here. Because I feel that we get a lot of questions about how to get waves, and in general I just use the heat gun and the power of the heat to help it move, because as it warms the resin it pushes it out and then we get those extra cells and lacing. So I'm not going to crop this part out, but obviously if you know what you're doing and don't like this bit, then you can just fast forward to the next section. I would love to know your thoughts on me doing videos in this way where they're longer format. If you enjoy this more in-depth tutorial, please leave some comments below. Okay, so now I want to add a band of white here. So again, using some clear, we'll put down a bit of a barrier first here with a bit of clear, and then add some white on the top. So when you start using the heat gun to push the resin out, you'll notice that it takes a little while for it to start moving. That's because you need to warm it up a little bit. So I'm just using circular motion to warm that resin up, and then when it starts to move, then I know that it's warm enough and I can move on to the next area, because you don't want to spend too much time in the same area because you run the risk of burning the resin. So once it starts moving, I know that I can move on to the next area, and then I can just go backwards and forwards across that area to help manipulate it to move it. And as you can see, I'm trying to get it to spread, to break up, so then we get some cells and lacing happening, but I'm not liking that at the moment. So now I'm just reducing the heat, just so that we get a little, it's not breaking up so much, but it just helps it to move just ever so slightly, so we can get that band of colour, whiteness, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so I'm not actually liking how the clear is interacting, so I'm going to try a bit with just some white, just to see how that looks. I don't want as much white over this little bit here, so just going to just pour a small amount of white and then see how this goes with moving. So as you can see, you don't actually need to put any clear down before putting the white down. So, you know, that depends on how you feel about it when you're playing around with it. If you want that extra barrier with the clear, then go ahead, but you don't actually have to do that. Right, okay. I really like what's going on here. We'll just try and break this up a little bit and see if we can get something else happening. I might need a touch more white over here. Yeah, I think I'm going to just, let me see if I can see it from this angle, how it's looking. Oh yeah, maybe not. Maybe that's enough for there. I might need a little bit more in this area here and a touch up the top. So off camera, I was saying I might need a little bit more white here to spread down a little bit, and then just a little bit up here. So just a small amount of white just to break this area up a little bit. So in this area, I actually want to break this up as much as possible because I want it to be a bit more wispy. So I'm actually going to try and move it and blow it around more than the other areas. I want to really break this up because I want it to be like it's more, there's more depth in the background. around here.
And same with this, I'm just going to break this up by adding heat and making sure that this disperses and just creates more wispy waves in the top area.
Yeah, I think I'm going to put a tad more around here.
Now I found at this stage, because the coloured resin underneath had been sitting for quite some time, it was becoming a little bit more difficult for the white to move. Now I found then that I wasn't getting as many cells and lacing happening because the underneath colours were not moving as much and allowing the white to break up so much. So there is a window of opportunity to maximise on those cells and lacing, but you'll get to know this with your own resin when you're working with it.
Yeah, I'm not liking that little bit area there, so I'm just adding a touch more of the clear before adding a little bit more white, just to see if we can tidy this area up a little bit.
So my main take from this working on such a large board is I've got to be quite aggressive with the blowing of the white to achieve the cells that I want. So working on a smaller board, you can get away with a lot more.
So I like that a bit better over there now. I just need to get it to break up a little bit. So I just want to add a little bit of heat and see if we can get it to break up. Right, I'm liking this a lot better now. I think the colour's a lot more vibrant, and I think it's got a little bit more of the beachy wow factor, for want of a better word. So all I'm doing now is I'm just making sure that we've got no bubbles. I'm just glancing over this, and I'll keep coming back and checking on it every 10 minutes and seeing if it needs a zap to get rid of any bubbles. So I'm actually liking this a lot better now. Yeah, I think they're going to like this a lot better. Okay, I'm going to call that a day on this one, and hopefully this looks better in the morning.
I'm absolutely delighted with how this piece turned out. I hope you enjoyed the video process. Please feel free to leave a comment below on this longer format of video and your thoughts on it. So if you like it, please give it a thumbs up, or better still, subscribe to my channel. So until next time, bye for now.